Today, we are going to talk about how to evaluate inverse trig functions, specifically for secant, cosecant, and cotangent. We'll start with arccotangent of negative square root of 3 over 3. On the last video, I showed you guys how to evaluate arcsine, arccosine, and arctangent. So with this right here, I would like you to convert that to an arctangent. These are related to arctangent. If you do the reciprocal of arccotangent, you end up with arctangent. But you must also do the reciprocal of whatever is inside. So if you flip that, you end up with negative 3 on top and a square root of 3 on the bottom. As you can see, I flipped them because they are reciprocals of each other. If you remember, cotangent is x over y, and tangent is y over x. So as you can see, they're reciprocals of each other. Okay. Now, we are not allowed to have a square root at the bottom. So therefore, we are going to change that. Specifically by looking at multiplying that by square root of 3 on top and a square root of 3 at the denominator. That will give me an arctangent of negative 3 times the square root of 3 on top, and square root of 3 times square root of 3 is square root of 9, and the square root of 9 is simply 3. From here we can see that 3 and a 3 will reduce to 1 and 1 because you can divide each of them by 3. Therefore, what you really have left is arctangent of negative square root of 3. So we already talked about in the last video how to answer arctangent, and I know some of you have already memorized the tangent circle. Well, here's the unit circle, and where tangent is specifically negative square root of 3 would be here and here at the pi over 3's, at 2 pi over 3 and at 5 pi over 3. In that very specific order from least to greatest, once again, just like the first video, because 2 pi over 3 would show up first, starting from here. You rotate, you'll see 2 pi over 3 first, before you'll see 5 pi over 3. We always rotate counterclockwise from 0. Now your instructions will tell you in the assignment to have to find the answers from 0, specifically from 0 and including 0 to 2 pi. But you do not include 2 pi itself, and that's why we're finding essentially in the whole rotation, we're finding all the answers in one rotation. Now in arcsecant of square root of 2, once again, we don't want to solve arcsecant. We want to think of its reciprocal. Its reciprocal is arccosine, which means I need to do the reciprocal of what is one inside. Now, if you look at this as a fraction, that will be over 1. So 1 will go on top this time around, and square root of 2 will be at the denominator. Now with this, we're not allowed to have square at the bottom, so we go through the same steps as before. So this will be multiplied by square root of 2 over square root of 2. Because if you multiply by square root of 2 over square root of 2, what will happen is Square root of 2 at the bottom times square root of 2 is the square root of 4, which is simply 2. 1 times square root of 2 is square root of 2 on top. And as you can see, there is no more square root at the denominator. Now, from the last video, this means at what angle is the x-coordinate square root of 2 over 2? We know that the x-coordinate is positive, specifically in the right half of the circle. And specifically where x is square root of 2 over 2 is right here at pi over 4. And right here at 7 pi over 4. And as usual, we start from the least greatest, so we start at 0 here. Going counterclockwise, we'll hit pi over 4 first. And we'll eventually hit 7 pi over 4. And that's why the answer to this question is pi over 4 followed by 7 pi over 4 in a complete rotation. The last example here is for arccosecant. Now, arccosecant has a reciprocal, but I'm not worrying about that right now. First, I want you to understand where did this undefined come from. Undefined came from the fact that it was 0 at the denominator. Okay, now it doesn't matter what's on top at this point. Any number over 0 other than 0 is undefined. So let me just put a 1 on top. Now what would happen is I can't solve arccosecant, but I can solve its reciprocal, which is arcsine. And if I do the reciprocal of arccosecant, I need the reciprocal of 1 over 0. And that will become 0 over 1. And 0 over 1 is essentially just 0. Now, from the last video, we talked about this type of problem. This means at what angle is the y-coordinate 0? So, when you look at our circle here, the y-coordinate is 0. Specifically here, when the angle in radians is 0. And right here, where the angle in radians is pi. And once again, we start off here, going this direction. So we start off at 0 radians, and eventually we'll hit the other answer, which is pi radians. And that's why the answer is 0 and pi.